It started with a single name spoken too casually across the Sandringham dining room table. At first, nobody noticed the shift in Prince William's expression. But within seconds, the future king reportedly pushed back his chair, his jaw tightening as the realization hit him. Prince Harry had been invited behind his back. And according to insiders, what happened next stunned everyone present. The annual Sandringham lunch was never supposed to become another royal disaster. According to palace insiders, the gathering had been carefully framed as a quiet attempt to restore peace inside a family that had spent years fractured by resentment, betrayal, and public humiliation. Senior aides reportedly described it as a private healing gathering, a carefully controlled afternoon where tensions could finally soften away from cameras and headlines. But beneath the polished surface of royal tradition, something else was already unfolding. Something dangerous. And the people inside Sandringham could reportedly feel it long before the confrontation erupted. William arrived expecting a controlled family occasion, one built around routine, restraint, and carefully rehearsed civility. Yet almost immediately, insiders claimed the atmosphere felt strange. Staff members appeared unusually nervous. Conversations reportedly stopped the moment certain royals entered the room. Even the smallest interactions carried an uncomfortable stiffness that Catherine was said to notice right away. Those close to the Princess of Wales claim she watched William carefully throughout the opening moments of the gathering, sensing his growing unease before he said a single word. Because while everyone else seemed to know exactly what was coming, William reportedly did not. Then came the moment that changed everything. According to multiple royal sources, Harry's name surfaced casually during a discussion about seating arrangements and family timing. At first, William allegedly thought he had misheard it, but the silence that followed reportedly told him everything. Harry was not simply being discussed. He was already expected, invited, approved, and somehow the future king had never been informed. Witnesses claimed the color drained from William's face almost instantly. One insider described the shift as immediate and chilling, saying the warmth disappeared from the room within seconds. Catherine reportedly looked toward William the moment she realized what had happened, understanding before anyone else just how deeply the betrayal had landed. What made the situation worse was not merely Harry's presence. It was the secrecy surrounding it. Palace aides allegedly kept the invitation hidden until the very last moment out of fear that William would refuse to attend altogether. Some reportedly believed surprising him would force a confrontation that could finally lead to reconciliation. Others feared the exact opposite, but remained silent anyway. And sitting at the center of it all was King Charles himself, a father reportedly desperate to repair the divide between his sons before the wounds became impossible to close. Insiders claim Charles believed Sandringham's private setting could create the emotional breakthrough the family had failed to achieve for years. But instead of healing old scars, the decision may have ripped them open even further. The tension inside the dining room reportedly became unbearable almost immediately after the truth emerged. Conversations collapsed into awkward silence. Staff members avoided eye contact. Several royals allegedly sat frozen as William struggled to process what had just happened around him. Then, without warning, the future king reportedly pushed his chair back sharply and stood up. Witnesses described his expression as controlled but furious, the kind of anger that no longer needed shouting to terrify everyone nearby. Catherine is said to have quietly risen moments later, watching her husband with growing concern as he prepared to leave. And before the main course was ever served, William reportedly walked out of the Sandringham lunch entirely, leaving stunned silence behind him. The aftermath was said to be even colder than the confrontation itself. Palace staff later described the atmosphere inside Sandringham as ice cold, with senior royals retreating into separate rooms while aides scrambled to contain the emotional damage unfolding behind closed doors. Some insiders reportedly feared the walkout marked a point of no return between the brothers, while others believed the deeper fracture now existed between William and the people within the palace he no longer trusted. Because according to those closest to the situation, William did not simply feel ambushed by Harry's appearance. He felt blindsided by the people who orchestrated it in secret while expecting him to quietly accept it for the sake of appearances. But what truly shattered William wasn't Harry's invitation alone. It was discovering who had personally approved it without ever warning him. In the days leading up to the Sandringham lunch, whispers had already begun moving quietly through royal corridors. Not loud enough to become public scandal, but sharp enough to unsettle the people closest to the crown. According to insiders, King Charles had privately authorized discreet outreach to Prince Harry weeks earlier, convinced that another year of silence between his sons would only deepen the damage already surrounding the monarchy. Those close to the king reportedly claimed he had become increasingly emotional about the family divide, especially as pressure mounted around his reign, public expectations, and the growing uncertainty surrounding the future of the institution itself. To Charles, this was no longer simply about personal heartbreak. It was about survival. The monarchy could not afford endless war between the heirs of Diana while the entire world watched. But the way the plan was handled allegedly created the very explosion Charles hoped to avoid. Sources claim senior aides were instructed to keep the arrangement strictly confidential, limiting knowledge of Harry's invitation to only a small inner circle inside the palace. Even some staff members reportedly involved in coordinating the lunch did not know the full guest list until hours before the gathering began. The secrecy was deliberate. Palace insiders allegedly feared that if William learned about the invitation too early, he might refuse to attend altogether or demand the reunion be cancelled immediately. And so, instead of transparency, silence became the strategy. A dangerous silence, one built on the hope that forcing both brothers into the same private setting might somehow break years of resentment in a single afternoon. Queen Camilla was reportedly aware of the arrangement long before the lunch itself, something that has since fueled even deeper speculation inside royal circles. While some insiders insist she supported Charles's attempt to restore family unity, others quietly claimed she feared the plan could spiral into disaster from the very beginning. Yet despite those concerns, the preparations reportedly continued in secret. Most shocking of all was the allegation that William's own team had been intentionally excluded from sensitive scheduling discussions connected to Sandringham. According to royal sources, key logistical details were carefully withheld to prevent leaks and avoid confrontation before the gathering began. But in doing so, the palace may have unintentionally created a far greater betrayal than the reunion itself. Harry, meanwhile, reportedly accepted the invitation cautiously and in near total secrecy. Insiders claimed the Duke of Sussex understood immediately how explosive the situation could become if William had not been informed beforehand. Some sources suggest Harry repeatedly questioned whether his brother truly knew about the arrangement, while others insist he believed Charles had already secured William's reluctant agreement privately. Either way, the emotional risk surrounding the meeting was impossible to ignore. The family wounds were no longer fresh arguments waiting to cool. They had hardened over years of interviews, accusations, broken trust, and public humiliation that neither side had fully recovered from. And despite the palace's careful planning, cracks reportedly began forming long before lunch was ever served. According to insiders, tension was already building across Sandringham hours before William arrived. Staff members allegedly sensed unease among senior royals. Conversations became shorter. Certain aides avoided discussing schedules altogether. One source claimed the atmosphere felt unnaturally controlled, as though everyone inside the estate was waiting for a collision they knew could no longer be avoided. Catherine reportedly noticed the discomfort almost immediately upon arrival, while several family members were said to appear unusually guarded throughout the morning. Even Charles himself allegedly seemed distracted and emotionally strained, carrying the weight of a decision that now threatened to unravel in real time. What made the situation even more volatile was the growing belief among palace insiders that William would not simply see Harry's appearance as a family reunion. He would see it as manipulation, as another decision made around him instead of with him. And for a future king already battling years of distrust surrounding his brother, that distinction changed everything. Because the moment William realized the truth, the issue stopped being about reconciliation entirely. It became about loyalty, secrecy, and the terrifying realization that people within his own family had knowingly kept him in the dark. Before voices were raised and before chairs scraped across the floor, Princess Catherine reportedly sensed something was terribly wrong. Witnesses say she noticed the unusual silence among aides, the nervous glances exchanged across corridors, and the unmistakable feeling that a royal ambush was unfolding in real time. Sources close to the palace claim Catherine became suspicious within minutes of arriving. Staff members reportedly avoided giving direct answers about final guest arrangements, while several aides appeared visibly uncomfortable whenever scheduling details were mentioned. One insider claimed that Catherine attempted multiple times to clarify who had already arrived at Sandringham, only to receive vague and carefully worded responses that revealed almost nothing. It was subtle but impossible to ignore. The kind of silence that says more than words ever could. What made the situation even more unsettling was the growing disconnect between William's calm demeanor and the anxiety surrounding everyone else inside the estate. Insiders alleged that the Prince of Wales had no idea Harry was already nearby, possibly even inside Sandringham itself, while preparations for lunch continued around him. That detail alone reportedly terrified several aides who feared the timing of the reveal could trigger exactly the kind of confrontation the palace had spent weeks trying to avoid. But instead of clarity, the strategy remained secrecy. And with every passing moment, the emotional pressure inside the royal household only intensified. Catherine, according to sources, quietly attempted to steady the atmosphere before it collapsed completely. Those close to the family claim she spent much of the pre-lunch gathering carefully observing interactions, trying to calm rising tension without drawing attention to it publicly. She reportedly noticed how some family members avoided certain conversations entirely, while others appeared deeply uncomfortable discussing anything connected to Harry. The division inside the family had become impossible to hide. Even among senior royals, opinions reportedly remained sharply split over whether Harry should have been invited at all. As the gathering continued, the discomfort reportedly spread through nearly every room inside Sandringham. Witnesses later described the atmosphere as painfully strained, with conversations becoming increasingly forced and fragmented. One insider claimed even longtime staff members seemed emotionally unsettled, fully aware that a single unexpected moment could ignite disaster. That moment allegedly came only minutes before lunch seating began. According to multiple royal sources, William overheard a brief exchange referencing Harry's arrival just as final preparations for the family meal were being completed. At first, insiders claim he appeared confused, believing there must have been some misunderstanding. But the reaction surrounding him reportedly confirmed the truth immediately. The silence, the avoided eye contact, the sudden stillness among aides. In that instant, William allegedly realized not only that Harry had been invited, but that nearly everyone around him had known in advance except him. Witnesses claimed Catherine's expression changed immediately as she recognized exactly what her husband was beginning to process. One insider described her as visibly alarmed, understanding before anyone else how emotionally explosive the situation was about to become. The deeper pain, according to those closest to the palace, was not simply Harry's presence. It was the realization that William had walked unknowingly into a carefully orchestrated reunion planned behind closed doors without his knowledge. For a future king already struggling with years of broken trust, public betrayal, and emotional exhaustion surrounding his brother, the secrecy surrounding the invitation reportedly cut deeper than anyone around the table anticipated. Catherine is said to have quietly attempted to defuse the situation before it escalated further, but by then the emotional damage had already been done. The tension had grown too large to contain, too personal to smooth over with polite conversation or royal tradition. The room reportedly fell silent as Prince William stood abruptly from the table. One insider claimed the future king looked completely blindsided, while another described a stare so cold it left even senior royals speechless. Within moments, William was heading for the exit, and nobody could stop him. According to royal insiders, the tension that had been quietly building throughout Sandringham finally erupted the moment William fully understood the scale of what had been hidden from him. Witnesses claimed the future king remained silent for several seconds after discovering Harry's presence had been concealed until the last possible moment. But that silence reportedly felt heavier than shouting. The kind of silence that forces every person in the room to stop breathing while waiting for the explosion they know is coming. Harry's unexpected appearance instantly changed the emotional balance inside the dining room. Sources close to the palace claimed several family members looked visibly uncomfortable the moment William rose from his chair, realizing the carefully managed reunion was collapsing in real time. Some insiders allege Harry himself appeared tense and uncertain, fully aware that his brother's anger was no longer directed only at him. This was something larger now, deeper, more personal. Because from William's perspective, the betrayal had already spread far beyond years of conflict with Harry. It now reached directly into the heart of the family he was supposed to trust most. According to multiple accounts, William reportedly confronted senior family members over the secrecy surrounding the invitation, demanding to know who approved the arrangement without informing him. Witnesses claimed the emotional temperature inside the room shifted instantly from discomfort to outright crisis. One insider described the confrontation as controlled fury, saying William never needed to raise his voice for the intensity to terrify everyone present. Another source alleged that several aides standing nearby appeared completely frozen, aware they were watching years of buried resentment finally break through the surface in front of the king himself. Charles reportedly attempted to calm the situation almost immediately. Insiders claimed the king tried to frame the reunion as an effort to heal the family before the divide became irreversible. But according to those familiar with the confrontation, William was no longer willing to hear explanations. The secrecy surrounding Harry's invitation had already destroyed any possibility of trust in that moment. The emotional fallout reportedly spread rapidly through the estate. Witnesses claim conversations stopped entirely as William refused to continue the lunch and prepared to leave. One insider described the atmosphere as emotionally shattered, saying the room no longer felt like a royal gathering but like the aftermath of a family collapse nobody could reverse. Catherine reportedly followed shortly afterward, deeply concerned about William's emotional state as the situation spiraled beyond control. Sources close to the Princess of Wales claimed she had feared throughout the morning that the gathering could end badly, but even she may not have anticipated the speed at which everything unraveled once the truth finally surfaced. Behind the scenes, palace aides allegedly entered immediate crisis mode. Staff members reportedly scrambled to prevent details of the confrontation from leaking beyond Sandringham's walls, while senior advisors quietly debated how the fallout could damage both Charles's authority and the monarchy itself. Some insiders feared the walkout would become impossible to hide entirely, especially once rumors began circulating among royal correspondents already suspicious about unusual movements surrounding the lunch. Others reportedly worried about something even worse, that the confrontation had permanently deepened the fracture between William and Harry beyond anything the palace could repair publicly. What made the moment especially devastating was the emotional contrast unfolding inside the family itself. Charles had reportedly hoped the gathering might symbolize reconciliation, a fragile but meaningful step toward restoring unity within the House of Windsor. Instead, it became another painful reminder that beneath royal titles and carefully managed appearances, the wounds between the brothers remained dangerously raw. And for William, the experience allegedly confirmed a growing fear that private loyalty inside the monarchy had become impossible to separate from political calculation. As cars reportedly departed Sandringham and silence settled across the estate, insiders claimed the emotional damage lingered long after the confrontation ended. Staff members avoided discussing the incident openly. Family members retreated into separate conversations behind closed doors. And somewhere inside the palace, the realization reportedly began sinking in that the monarchy had not just witnessed another royal disagreement. It had witnessed trust collapsing in real time between the future king and the people surrounding him. As news of the dramatic walkout quietly spread through royal circles, panic reportedly erupted behind palace walls. Senior aides allegedly turned on each other, desperate to determine who failed to warn William and whether the entire reunion had been doomed from the very beginning. In the hours after William's sudden departure from Sandringham, the atmosphere inside the royal household reportedly shifted from emotional shock to outright institutional crisis. According to palace insiders, phones began ringing almost immediately between senior offices as aides scrambled to understand how a private attempt at reconciliation had detonated so publicly behind closed doors. What terrified officials most was not simply the confrontation itself, but the growing realization that too many people already knew something had gone horribly wrong. Within elite royal circles, whispers were spreading fast, and the palace reportedly understood that once rumors escaped those walls, controlling the narrative becomes almost impossible. Communications teams allegedly entered full crisis mode before the lunch gathering had even formally ended. Sources claim emergency discussions began over how to contain potential leaks if details of William's walkout reached royal correspondents or political insiders connected to the crown. One palace source reportedly described the mood as absolute panic, with aides moving frantically between offices while senior staff debated how much damage had already been done. The monarchy had spent years carefully managing the image of royal unity despite endless fractures behind the scenes. But this incident felt different, more dangerous, because it reportedly exposed conflict not only between William and Harry, but between William and the institutions surrounding his father. As pressure intensified, accusations allegedly started flying between royal households almost immediately. According to insiders, aides connected to William's office demanded answers about who specifically authorized the secrecy surrounding Harry's invitati. On and why Kensington Palace had been excluded from key scheduling discussions. In response, some members of Charles's team reportedly argued the confidentiality had been necessary to avoid exactly the kind of public refusal they feared William might make if informed earlier. But those explanations did little to calm the fury spreading through William's camp. To them, The issue was no longer Harry's attendance alone. It was the deliberate concealment, the calculated silence, the feeling that the future king had been strategically cornered inside his own family gathering. Questions surrounding who concealed Harry's invitation reportedly became one of the most explosive internal issues facing the palace after the incident. Some insiders privately blamed communications advisors close to Charles, while others allegedly pointed toward competing royal offices that had stopped fully trusting each other long before Sandringham. According to sources familiar with the fallout, tensions between the king's household and William's team had already been quietly growing for months over issues connected to control, succession planning, and media strategy. The disastrous lunch simply exposed those fractures in the most painful way possible. Charles's advisors reportedly moved quickly to defend the king's intentions as criticism intensified behind closed doors. Insiders claimed they insisted Charles had acted purely out of desperation to heal his family before years of hostility permanently destroyed any hope of reconciliation. But despite those defenses, many inside royal circles allegedly believed Charles had fundamentally underestimated the emotional depth of William's anger and exhaustion surrounding his brother. Meanwhile, William's camp was said to be absolutely furious over the lack of transparency surrounding the event. Sources close to Kensington Palace claimed trust between royal households deteriorated sharply after Sandringham, with several advisors privately questioning whether future coordination between the king's office and William's team could continue normally at all. One insider reportedly described relations between the households as completely broken, saying the emotional damage from the ambush extended far beyond a single lunch. It had shattered confidence in the people responsible for managing the monarchy itself. At the same time, fears about public fallout reportedly continued growing by the hour. Palace officials allegedly understood that if the full story leaked, the headlines would not focus on reconciliation. They would focus on betrayal, secrecy, and dysfunction inside the royal family at the highest possible level. For a brief moment, Prince Harry reportedly believed the Sandringham invitation could mark the beginning of reconciliation. But as the atmosphere collapsed around him, and William disappeared from the estate, insiders claim Harry realized he had walked directly into one of the coldest royal confrontations in years. According to sources close to the palace, Harry arrived at Sandringham carrying cautious optimism that had not existed inside the royal family for a very long time. The invitation itself reportedly felt significant, personal, even hopeful. After years of public fallout, painful interviews, private bitterness, and emotional distance from the institution he once called home, insiders claim Harry believed this private gathering might finally open the door to something different. Not a perfect reunion, not immediate forgiveness, but perhaps the beginning.